Okay, Laura.
All right, Daryl, we're ready to, if you could bring us in. Count us down. There we go. Daryl, can you count us down? We're ready to come back.
Will they be here?
Daryl, can you bring us back?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Yes? Okay. You guys can hear?
Yep, bring us in.
You guys are able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Okay, do you guys do the entire song?
No.
Okay. Let me I'm gonna put your mics up right now. Turn the mic up and then... Okay, turn the mics up, so 5 seconds you can start.
Okay, how you doing this evening? My name is Keith Williams. I'm with my co-host Laura Sigmund. We've been doing this show for what, Laura, about since 2012?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We've been consistent.
Enjoying it.
We started on Saturdays and now we're on Wednesdays. And we are doing some wonderful things at Courageous. Courageous is a nonprofit that elevates kids' life through sports. And so what we doing with the work that we do, we said we might as well do a family hour where we can talk about issues that affect families and kids that go through our system and make it from a broad-based appeal. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to get the message out. According to Lord, Keith, and Steve, we live in our own world, but guess what? We're connected to this world.
Yes, we
and
are.
So based on that, that's what Courageous is all about. We have a wonderful relationship with Wayne State, who's our partner with our nonprofit. And now this summer, we're going to have access to all the facilities to do baseball, track and field, basketball, swimming. We're going to give a kid a nice smorgasbord of things to get involved with. But more importantly, they're going to be on a college environment. Mm-hmm. So while they're learning how to play sports and teamwork and all this other stuff, we're now getting their minds ready for the next stage in their life. Either it may be college or either going through a trade, but at least they're going to be in a positive environment where they can uplift their lives.
That's beautiful, Keith. And you've been doing that work for a mighty long time, even before Courageous. So you've continued to be the leadership in the community that we look for. That's a fantastic thing. What a great legacy.
And so what, the topic for today is what does it mean by growing up? What does growing up Black means? What does growing up Black means? Okay. But after we go through that, and then we want to talk a little bit about Kwame, welcome him home. What impact is that going to happen? What impact is that going to have in the Black community trade? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today too, Laura.
How about those jobs, Keith? You got some job opportunities?
Oh, yes. Also, the Wayne County Sheriff, I'm the director of recruiting for the Wayne County Sheriff. We have 200 jobs available. If you want to get in law enforcement, not for a job, but a career, call me up, 313-215-4121. The qualification is this. You got to have a high school diploma or GED, valid driver's license, no felony, and good correctable eyesight, and pass the physical. you have no problem. Then you got to take a personality test. You got several testing, oral and written exam. You got several testing that you got to go through to meet those criteria. And once you do that, we start off at $36,000, 401k tuition reimbursement, health insurance, and vacation and upward mobility. So if you want a job in law enforcement and come work with the sheriff's office, the number is 313-657-8962. 313-657-8962.
Fabulous.
And that's
Keith, this new year has started off a little rickety, but last week was a beautiful week, wasn't it? Last Wednesday was the inauguration for Harris and Biden. And I thought that was such a beautiful, well done. I've never actually watched, I don't think, any inauguration from beginning to end. And I thought that was extremely interesting. Something about it was riveting. I don't know if it was because it was history, it was because it was provided in such turbulent times, but something about it made me feel that it was a healing to our nation. Something about it made me feel like I could take a deep breath.
I'm gonna take this quick call and I'll call you right. Hope come right back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was interesting because I don't know, Linda, how did you feel? I felt really at peace when I saw and watched all that happen.
Can I say I was waiting to exhale?
That's a good way. That's a very good way to put it. I dropped a few tears.
It was a class act.
It was. It was.
All the way. It was calming. It was not overly partisan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was what the country needed at
I
that.
felt it was a balm in Gilead. Okay. It was.
Yeah.
I felt like it was some healing going on for our nation, regardless of your party or your political leaning. I sort of felt that there was an opportunity for a unified America, which is what we need. That's what it calls for today.
Even though there are some, I'm just going to say this, there are some that are determined not to do that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day we'll be okay. But in the news, there are so many different things. The same time that we were reviewing the inauguration, the former governor was in court here in Michigan about the whole city of Flint water snafu debacle. But at the end of the day, I sort of see that things are going to prevail and progress well for all of the citizens in these United States. I feel very, very positive about what's to come. But Linda, what really floored me, I was shedding tears. I tried real hard to brave it, but I couldn't. But when that little Gorman got on and did that poem, I lost it.
Wise beyond her years.
I just totally lost it. Keith, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but it made me cry. It really made me cry. Because she captured the plight of not just the people, but the country. The people,
right,
with the episodic events, with everything that was, going down the pipe. That is something about it was extremely moving and a place of healing. And then, of course, the day before the inauguration, we found out that Detroit's own Kwame Kilpatrick was released in the wee hours of the morning. That his sentence was commuted. And
yes, his sentence was commuted.
And I'm sure there's some people in our listening audience who want to participate in this conversation. I would welcome your feedback when we get to that part. 313-837-1340. 313-837-1340 if you want to participate in our conversation. Linda, I called Linda, guys, earlier today because I heard something on the radio yesterday and I was in transition, so I couldn't get the whole gist of what was going down in the city of Detroit, but I understand City Council was making a couple moves. And Linda, did you get a chance to investigate that?
Well, I'm looking at it, and what it looks like is city council approved the contract for the outside attorneys. Now, I spent half of my day doing this.
Getting into it, huh?
Other stuff. And it's a counterclaim against activists protesting police brutality. And the question I have for anybody, like somebody please listen and call in, is what's up with protesting protest?
You know, but Keith should have a separate leaning because Keith is in law enforcement. And I'm a little concerned when you sue the people who are enacting their First Amendment. But we also saw this right on January 6th. They claimed they were lawfully protesting.
Well, see, here's the difference. The difference is these folks were marching. They weren't breaking into anything, much less going into unauthorized
buildings or areas. Yeah.
Buildings or areas. It is unlawful. They were breaking windows and breaking into the Capitol. They were erecting gallows. Yeah. They were like going to hang the vice president.
They had a malicious intent and it was clear and transparent.
Right, they had malicious, and let me not forget this, they were armed.
That's right.
They were, and they killed. Okay, here's the thing that I want to know. They profess to be Blue Lives Matter. Why are you gonna beat somebody over the head with a fire extinguisher?
A flagpole.
Right. You closed the man up in the door. I mean, that was just horrific when you see him screaming.
You're right.
You're closing him up in the door. And then you kill somebody.
Right.
But you say, and I just saw a picture of something else I was looking through today. See, you sent me down that rabbit hole.
Sorry.
I doing a thing that said Blue Lives Matter. And I want to just take that and juxtapose it against the man, the officer in the door.
Right. Right.
You're holding up a sign that says Blue Lives Matter. And here's this man in the door wearing blue.
Yeah. Yeah. And they knew it. They knew it. Right.
Because
right.
You want to get somewhere where you're not supposed to be, to have malicious intent when you are coming in with zip ties.
That's right.
Are using scaffolding when you're trying to scale the building, like you're in my favorite movie.
You're in militia gear, right? So I mean,
right.
It was clear and transparent, I think, for all of us. But Keith, I'm a little confused with what the position is for the city of Detroit. The young lady who tried to defend the request for with ACLU said that Detroit is a predominantly Black city, and telling us that we can't have a lawful assembly of protesters and you countersue, but the countersue really was more about the people who tried to enact violence. So I don't know, as a law enforcement person, Keith, how you can separate the act of violence from the protesters who were trying to amicably and peacefully do the thing that they were doing. I guess it's quite a bit because it's a police control, it's a riot control. I don't know, Keith, what do you have to say about that?
First and foremost, I don't want to speak. I'm going to speak in generalities because I don't know all the legalese of this, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. The first job is to serve and protect. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the police job, serve and protect. Mm-hmm. And secondly, melee and crowd gatherings is a matter of perception. Okay. Each person got their own perception about what they think happened to them. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, it's, everybody's got a First Amendment right, to organize and march peacefully and all. You have your First Amendment. Am I right or wrong about the First Amendment rights?
That's right.
But you don't have the right to link to your own understanding.
We're gonna leave it right there. If you want to get in on our conversation, 313-837-1340, 313-837-1340. I was a little
but let me also say this to you. You have at the time, my boss, Benny Napoleon, was the sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Craig, 2 black men.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had that kind of problem in Detroit in a mighty, mighty long time.
Naturally.
All that
Yeah.
stuff could have been worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there was some showmanship,
Mm-hmm.
some grandstanding on the young brothers and sisters,
Mm-hmm.
the part, because we didn't have those problems in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had that since stress.
Mm-hmm.
See, before you go out and, before you go do something, you need to go ask somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were reacting to what happened in Minneapolis, right? So
Yeah, right.
it it was an emotional movement, and so you could relate to it. But I was very, very proud to be a Detroiter or a Metro Detroiter around our response in the nation. They looked at Detroit and saw that it was peaceably conducted, in my opinion. But apparently there were some other things, and that's why you got all these lawsuits. I really like for us to dig a little bit deeper into that when we get a chance. But Keith, because we don't have Steve on this evening with his inspirational moment, I took some liberties and I asked our resident orator, Dr. Dorma Magruder, to review, actually not to review, but to read the poet laureate Amanda Gorman's piece. So that should take the place of what Steve would normally offer us as an inspirational moment. Dorma, how you feel about reading that for us? Can you read that piece?
Yes, I can.
All
Can
right,
you
so
hear me?
we hear you fine, man. We can hear you fine. So
Okay.
to those of you in the listening audience, we would love for you to chime in about how you felt about this poem that Dorma is about to read. 313-837-1340. If you didn't get a chance because maybe you were at work or you attended to the babies to see at the inauguration this piece that happened, it was only 5 minutes, 56 seconds. So you could have missed it. But I think it is worth recognition. So Ms. Dorman, you go right ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, Linda and Keith. The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The less we carry, a sea we must wade. The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet, the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. So we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but to what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. Even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one should make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all of the bridges we've made. That is the promise to Glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. Oh, we've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, that would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can periodically be delayed, but it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared. In its inception, we did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how can we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised, but whole, benevolent, but bold, fierce, and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burden. But one thing is certain, if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left, with every breath from my bronze pounded chest. We will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation and every corner of our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When the day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Dorma. Thank you for that.
So the essence of the poem is what?
That we have been through so much as a people, not only as African Americans, but as Americans, that we have been through so much that we always can find the good, that no matter what has tried to destroy us in the last 4 years or 400 years, it cannot destroy what we are and who we are. And because we have the strength and the courage to keep moving forward, we can make our lives and our country and our children and everything around us what it deserves to be.
I believe in my heart that, we're seeing this right now. I have to ask you, when you heard Martin Luther King and his multiple addresses, did you ever thought that I Have a Dream would resonate and still be something that every person in any space in community and leadership has to address? This woman, being super young, I believe, will have this poem be revisited because it reviews America's past, its present, and its future. And I think it is so important for us to remember and to realize that, she talked about, she gave a few digs, but she also gave a few benevolent hopes. There's
She
hope.
told the truth.
It's hope for the future. I believe
Right.
what she's saying is this new administration is the beginning of the hope for the future. I got that, Daryl. Thank you. Keith, I was so moved by that. And Dorma, you were able to recite it without tears. I went back and played it on YouTube
Yes.
a couple different times. And you have to have been in that moment to have seen and recognized the greatness of it. And there'll be some
Yes.
retelling. It'll be some retelling, and it'll be a few people trying to pick it apart and trying
Right.
to waylay its prominence, but it won't happen on my watch.
Well, you know, it's funny because
Yeah,
I'm
that
one of
we
the
know.
people who always reads the comments. And one of the digs was, I like poetry that rhymes. And it's like, then you don't know what poetry is. Poetry is a meter. Poetry is a flow. And it's one of those things, either you get it or you don't.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
Words, if you listen to, you were referring to Dr. King, and some of his, I call them sermons, were poetic in nature. If you lay the words out, if you lay the paragraphs off, they are complete thoughts carried off into a sentence. Many of our great orators are poets.
That's
We
right.
just don't recognize it, because in school they teach you that poetry rhymes.
That's right. That's right. This stanza, has to have a rhyme, but not
Right.
necessarily.
No, those are different forms.
That's right. That's right.
So
I found
what
it to be
she-
riveting, very riveting and
Yes.
moving, very riveting and moving. Keith, I think we have a lot to learn, but for a 20-year-old person to be able to catalog in the frame of 6 minutes the reference of what it is to be American. And I don't care if you're Black, white, Jewish, green, purple, orange. I think that poem transcends that space of ethnicity. I think it is everybody's poem. I don't even think that's a Black piece. I really
No.
don't. I really don't.
I get what she was saying, but the America the Beautiful has never been America the Beautiful for Black people. Okay. And I see what she was trying to bring it all together about what she views as this America. Okay. But until after slavery, until up into 1964, we didn't have our civil rights.
That's right.
We didn't have our, civil rights, but more importantly, we didn't have economic rights.
And we still don't.
We still don't.
We still don't, because that's the big threat. Every time we have made that push to become self-sufficient, we have been blocked by the jealousy of the other, who have no embodied reason for not being.
By the stroke of an ink pen. By the stroke of an ink pen.
But I just think that we have never been. I was just thinking about this today. The Middle East culture, from the Jewish to the Arabic communities, they were taught to be merchants all their lives. We were taught to be subservient to those folks who have the means. Okay.
Can we do the station break right where you are and come right back to that? Because that's a great point. That's a very great point.
WCHB, Royal Oak, Detroit. Streaming online at WCHB1340.com. The voice of the church.
All right. So, Keith, finish your point. What were you saying, dear?
What I'm saying here is this: it's the way it's the way you taught, it's the way you carry out your life, and that's why I want to segue into the topic today that feeds off of what I just said.
That's right.
Okay. The topic is what do I do with it?
What does it mean? What does Black mean to you?
What does it mean to be growing up Black? What does it mean growing up Black means? Growing up Black means.
Please, audience, please listen to audience. If you got something to say about this, join in 313-837-1340, 313-837-1340. Linda, what does it mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Well, I always talk about how my thought was a little bit different because I thought other people were here to wait on me. Because my block, and I grew up on the West Side, my block had the whole pantheon of the Black experience. There were attorneys, there were folks who did day work, there were social workers, there were blue collar folks that worked in the factories, there were mothers that stayed home, there were mothers that went out to work. So that was my block. I thought that's how I did not, and people laugh at me when I say this, I did not realize that doctors were anything but Black. I never
Beautiful.
had anything a doctor of color until I went to college. That includes my ophthalmologist, my dentist, my pediatrician. I never had a white doctor. So I'm not the person to ask. So most of my teachers were Black. They told us we could do
Anything.
And then when I did, and I have to tell this story, I was thinking about that earlier today. When I finally had a white teacher for science in the 6th grade, I remember telling him that he really didn't know what he was doing and when we were going to start doing experiments. He had us reading out of the book. I said, science is not taught out of the book. And he's like, you got to do the book first. I said, no, we've never done that before. We didn't do it in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. We did experiments. So when are we going to do the experiments?
That's a great experience.
But I'm gonna give it. She's giving it from her experience.
That's
all
right.
have
That's why I said
That's
why I said I'm not the person to ask because I had a totally
different
bubble-like
experience. Yeah, right.
But we can say the layer of all of that, you can still have a Black experience, but in all of that, the white man, those folks that don't look like us has always been in control. Okay.
Well, I didn't know that though.
Yeah, but
I did because my daddy came home and told me every day. My daddy, Keith, came home every day. He did 42 years in the union at Pepsi. And he would tell me every single day. He would make a snide remark about something or somebody, the way they addressed him or the way they said something to him. How he, was always being watched or we learn and we adopt. So where Linda had this bubble of this euphoric view of African Americans, I had a suppressed view. I had a suppressed view that if we stepped outside of our Dexter Davison grandmother relationship, if we stepped outside of our Evergreen and 7 Mile relationship, if we stepped outside of our coveted little small, Grand Boulevard relationship with our family connections, we might be preyed upon. I did have that as an understanding.
Hold on. I'm going to give it from a Black man's perspective.
Right. Yours is going to be different.
What does growing up Black mean? To me, inferiority. Secondly, can't be trusted. Okay. Black kids don't want anything in life. What America did, despite all our euphoria and all the things that we've so accomplished, we have never been respected as a race amongst the majority class.
Right.
No, we've not.
And they the one gave us those stereotypes.
And we acknowledged them and adopted them.
Yeah, and we carried on that behavior from generations to generations. Okay, and we still do it.
Yes, Keith, we do.
You think about it, everybody comes out our community benefit more than we benefit because we've been trained not to ask for anything, but to be subservient to what they want us to, what they want us to deal with. And I'm just saying, as Black folk as a whole, America has not been good to us.
Oh, I would agree with you. I mean, I spent summers in Alabama.
I've been,
huh?
On purpose?
Well, yeah, my grandmother was from Selma. I've been to towns in Florida where there was no running water, where you took your Friday night bath out of a tin tub. It's So I've seen all of that, but I like my day-to-day experience was, okay, you got that. You have this. Like I said, I never felt subservient, even though they may try to make me so.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
Okay, somehow, and I was actually told this in the workplace. It was like, Linda, you just don't know, because the worst thing you can do to me is kill me. And you might go to jail if you did that.
Right. And I ain't afraid of dying. How about that?
Huh?
And I ain't afraid to die.
Right. So,
I was told I'm going to a better place. But you
right,
know,
well, not even that, but I remember my mother saying, do you have something you would die for? I said, yeah. I was not afraid of that. I was not afraid. You couldn't tell me I was inferior, because the question would be, why? Inferior to what? I
right.
didn't see
So
inferior to what?
you make a very valid point. So Keith is on the other end as a Black man. I always
Right.
have said Black men are an endangered species. So Keith, check this
Right.
out. My mother told me, though daddy came back to the house wearing some baggage, and he would take off that baggage when he got home, and you know, he would complain a little bit about what happened at the job and how somebody didn't do the job and he had to carry somebody else's weight. He would say stuff like how Black men had to work harder for the same pay as other people. But my mother was a militant mother. She told us we were great and we were to kick butt and take names, Linda. That was my mother's reaction to being a Black person. And I really think that most of the African American girls who were in school with me at Henry Ford, and who were on the swim team with me, and who were on the debate team with me, all had the same philosophy. And Keith, I think we see it today manifesting itself in the marketplace. You see more African American women rising to places of prominence. We're less intimidating to the masses.
Well, we are very intimidating to the master. But anyway,
we're less intimidating to the masses overall versus a Black man,
right.
where we get a easier pass, Keith, right? Nobody will recognize me as being a major challenge if it was between you and me. You're going to be the one that they're going to suppress versus me. So women have had,
Even if you're the more dangerous one.
even if I am. So though I understand the plight, I really believe that some of our advantages and some of our disadvantages with suppression and the lack of economic fortuity, I think we had some chances to recognize our greatness and our innovation. Keith, I remember watching the kids in my neighborhood make all type of inventive things. They didn't have go-karts with motors. They made them out of milk carts, you know. So your community could help lift you up if you had an active community. I mean, like I mentioned to you guys a few weeks ago, I remember
Just go ahead.
Keith, we had like mobile swim pools come to our neighborhood. I was like, this is the bomb diggity, what? You know, and Rabia sort of mentioned it last time we were on, when they extract those resources from school systems, you start to see maybe some more of a demise, and because now you have fewer resources, you don't have access to capital, you don't have communities fortified to provide you everything, and then you become preyed upon. I've never had, you know, being pulled over while being Black happen to me. I've never had to worry about some of the stuff that I can imagine callers in our listening audience could probably say were real for them, you know, driving across 8 Mile and getting pulled over just because, you know, your car looked like you shouldn't be.
I have been pulled over. I will say I have been pulled over while thought to being colored and young.
Wow.
And then they looked at my driver's license. Oh, she's not as young as I thought she was. And okay, fine.
So you think young people are even more preyed upon, Linda?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They're a bigger target.
Yeah,
huh?
I got pulled over. They're a bigger target, and you know, and they're like, oh, okay, she's an older Black woman. Yeah.
Keith, the only
So,
time being Black is as a challenge, I think, in the greater overall, is when we try to bridge or break out of our community bubble and try to step over into the landscape where we are not the majority. I think
Think about
that's when we start to see things in a different level.
think about this. There's a difference between a Southern black man and a Northern black
Oh,
man.
for sure. Oh, for sure.
I've been out, and I just getting ready. I'm gonna put this on Facebook. I'm gonna pose this question: Black folks, are we ever going to get over our inferiority complex?
You know, Keith, I used to wonder, and I still say, and I'm sorry, this is my bias, guys. This is my bias. I'm a
Do you
northerner.
hear what I said?
I
Did you hear
did.
what I said?
The
Are
inferiority
we ever
complex.
going to get over our inferiority complex?
See, I never thought that black men in the North had that, Keith, but I certainly felt that black men in the South felt that. And I could possibly be all the way wrong, but I remember seeing grown black men refer to younger Caucasian people as Miss and Mr., and they would be their seniors.
Yes, down south they do that.
And that was terrifying to me that that was in reverse. Shouldn't they be addressed to you that way? And so it was complicated. That was a complicated move for me. I never saw that. So I just assumed that if you are in the South, it's because you don't think much of yourself. That was a perception.
I'm gonna give you a case in point. Me and Kathy, remember we was down in Georgia, and we went into this pancake house, and the little white kid was saying, "Mom," and she was asking what he want for breakfast, and Kathy overheard the kid say, "I want this." So when we got to the table, it was a chocolate chip pancake with white lips. So I called the brother over and said, "What is this?"
Right.
He says, "A happy face." So what I'm saying to myself, so nigga, so this is you with a happy face. Okay. Then later on that day, we went to another restaurant, and this white owner was talking to black. I said, "You're not gonna talk to her around me like that."
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
But when the white man walked up, the black folks, "Here come Mr. Joe. Good morning." You know, that kind of stuff.
mhm.
They have been subject. They've been a subject of if you're being told that they weren't gonna be nothing, or they've been bullied to think that they can't do can't do nothing without them.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Up here, hey, I will speak my mind, and the hell with you.
You know, because I don't want to say it's pride, but it was self-confidence that had been reared, right, Keith? We didn't feel any way slighted or diminished because of the color of our skin. And I can imagine that we're not that far removed from not being able to drive into certain neighborhoods in southern spaces where people will prey on you. We saw this just last year when the young man walked through, what was that, in Kentucky or someplace? What's his name? Aubrey?
Oh, that was in Georgia.
In Georgia, where he's walking through a new build and they decided he didn't have any business being there. So just because he was running through a neighborhood.
And he got
Right.
killed.
Yeah.
And got killed.
The most egregious.
Was that not 2020?
Yeah. The most egregious thing I thought of that was how long that little town tried to cover it up.
Everybody.
For 6 months.
But think about it. Think about the other lives with other black folks that died that nobody knows about.
No, because it didn't make it to public light, right? If it hadn't been for the video or this new era, you're right. But you know what, Keith? A new day is dawning, and I believe that those battle scars can't be left behind, but they don't have to be our armament. Those battle scars don't need to be left behind. They need to be teachable moments or tools. I really believe that we have to forge through this and beyond this with the spirit of excellence, because I believe that if they could see you and forget about your color, everybody would want to embrace you, right? Be it north, south, east, or west. It wouldn't really matter because your accomplishments speak to greatness. And at the end of the day, that's what we should measure. But as long as people, and this is what I learned in my psychology class many hundred years ago, that the people who attempt to oppress oppress out of their own personal inferiority, right? We don't want you to have or to know what we have, because if you have it, then I have to give you or recognize you as an equal, and I can never afford that. And that's really
Because
what it
I
boils down to.
myself, I have nothing to, I have no self-esteem. And when you get in those spaces, you realize that there's a whole sense of one-upsmanship that they go through. There's a whole set of games that women play to not intimidate men.
Mhm.
Or when we come along, it's like that adds one more level of, they know, here's the deal. They know, even though we don't always recognize what lies within.
Mhm.
If you can still raise a family, start a business or a side hustle that becomes a business, and have this in spite of all of the barriers, what happens if those barriers are unleashed? If those barriers are removed,
That's right. And
now
everything was playing even.
I'm
Mhm.
not the great being that I try to pretend that I am. And I even go further. If oh, I can't talk about it here because that would let out a secret. So you all can ask me. You know, if I find out, you know, if you all find out that we're really aren't that wonderful, what happens to the order of things? I've always said this is what happened. If you look at the thing as corporate America, you remember you used to see the movies and they had secretaries and whatever, and men couldn't even get their own coffee and whatever. And then as soon as women and minorities came into corporate America, all of a sudden you had to do your own finance
Everything.
reports. You
Do
had to do your
12
own
jobs.
everything.
That's right.
Do 12 jobs. Wait a minute. How come? Oh, because they're not capable of doing that. Got it. So now we're all finding out, pulling the wool, you know, pulling the curtain
That's
back.
right. That's right. And you're absolutely right. Linda, you're so right. Listen, I was the very first African American manager at a company called USF Holland. They treated me swimmingly well, but they treated me swimmingly well only after I'd gone through the fiery furnace. I had, Keith, check this out. I worked in a union environment, Teamsters 243. I had a noose put on my desk. I had my tires cut. I had my windows bashed out. I went through all those things going through the course of being a supervisor, a Black management person over 187 Caucasian people. And it was a difficult journey, not for me. It wasn't for me. It was difficult for them to have to do what I told them to do, to have to recognize that I had the final say. And
Yes.
those acts of violence or acting out, Keith, was their intention to scare me off, to deter me from my path. But I would not allow that, because the money was good, and anything that you did to a car, a window, whatever, the company had to pay for that. And you think I didn't care? They gave me a company car because you bashed those windows out and cut that tire. They got to fix it. You think I care? I could care less. Let me find out who did it, and I'm gonna have your job. And I would say that to people all the time. You know what? The power that I have is in this ink pen. Play with me if you want to.
But look, Lord, let me also say this. Just imagine the average African American kid in the inner city environment has to pray that he get a shot. Okay, because where everything is based on and predicated on is that it's predicated on a tax base that the tax base has been eroded because the people that once had a little money that worked in the plants are no longer in the livable around.
Mhm.
So how do you finance schools? How do you give kids the best education when you don't have a tax base?
Right. And the lottery ain't doing it.
Right. And then on top of it, we don't control our political infrastructure.
Education, politics, or nothing else. Healthcare.
Yeah. But we gave up our political power, and that's a part of that inferiority complex. You know, that we had it for 40 years. It's time to let those folks have it again.
Keith, let me
When
ask
they
you.
don't realize they were the one that caused the havoc.
So Keith, is that the conversation about the sinking ship, everybody trying to bail and get out and save their own behind, or is it fortify the fortress so that we can all live? What's your view on that? Is it Detroit the sinking ship, or is it get here because it's the greatest of all the resources we must fortify so that we can have a future generation that owns something, that controls something, that has a voice in, in politics?
Well, I have not heard a person talk about what is in it for us.
Hmm.
Okay, but in this politics, we have to say, I believe in diversity. All that's the couch word. But first, I was always taught you got to take care of your own shores before you can take care of somebody else's shores.
That's right. Charity starts at home.
Well, that would be correct.
And the most important thing to me, Laura, you have to have a vision like Jesus. We don't have no visionaries. How we can take the land has been cleaned out and be rebuilt it to bring a new kind of culture, a culture it's an educated culture, not only in college but educated on life about God's will and and the way we live and the way we interact with one another. That's what I'm talking about. But if you don't control your own destiny, you're always going to be at the pleasure of somebody else's political and power scheme.
So Keith, how do you feel if I were to say you have not because you want not? Is that applicable?
That's a good point.
I mean, is
That's
that
a good one.
is it applicable to, no matter the gender? If you're a Black person and you're still talking about the woe is me, you have not because you want not. You keep, we have to have some mechanisms. Yes, they've taken some resources, but the first thing we need to do is reinvest in economic privilege because we don't have any. We don't even understand what that is. How many people do you know their grandparents own some property and they were able to bequeath it to another member in their family, or even their parents own some property, and when they left, when they you had this particular diamond? You have not because we need to change our mental trajectory, the expectations for us as a clan, as a group of people, starting, like you said, with your own intimate individual family. We have to unify on that level. But Keith, I think we need to see it in practice. The last I recall seeing it was probably on television. I've not yet even experienced it in my lifetime. I don't know. And maybe you guys are a little older than me. Maybe you know about the mass exodus from the South to the North, where somebody in the North would take in some of their family members and let them live there for a period of time until they could shore up and elevate and get to where they needed to go. We don't even seem to understand that dynamic anymore.
Right, because I would say in my own family, my grandmother's sister
Got the five.
was the first one here. I found letters that from my great grandfather in Alabama that said, okay, so-and-so's coming up north. When they come, you take care of them. You make sure they have a job. You make sure that they take care of business. She did that for her living siblings. She brought 3 of them. One sister ended up in New York, but her other sister and brother, and it was funny because she told my great uncle, she said, don't let him play in no jazz band. Tell him to get a job because he was a trombonist, but he had a degree, but he ended up working on the railroads. But that's a whole nother story when we got another 20 minutes. So that happened in my family. My grandfather came up from Florida. He went to Morehouse when Morehouse was a secondary school as well as a college. I got I keep his high school with me. So yeah, that's the story of my folks. Then I can tell about the other side, but like I said, that's another story.
Keith, did you ever witness or see that, family, hordes of family, your own family coming out of the South to, to shore up that Black family economics? We see that with Hispanics, we see it with Chaldeans, we see it with other people, but I've not seen it in my lifetime.
When you been working in the fields all your life, we have never taken the time to make the transition.
Woo!
Okay.
But
When
somebody,
you used to being told, get a good job and get good benefits. And that's how my parents were taught. And then that carry over
Okay.
to other people in your family tree.
right,
Okay.
right,
I'm a different kind of brother, because my doors in my church was wide open. And in the church, my zip codes were changing. And I was seeing different things and different systems and processes. And I just had to find my way into those processes. And I chose the economic route.
right, right. And
You
you did
know,
what you were supposed to do for your household, right? You know,
right,
you
right.
did what you were supposed to do. But you know what? I read a book, Keith, by an economist, a Black economist, who said that the only way we are going to make a change is if we, your generation and my generation, start to make tremendous sacrifice. We have to sacrifice our personal desires, our sense of comfort, in order to elevate the next generation. Because if we don't give them access to that comfortability, where they have a house and heat and running water and cars and things and all that stuff, if we don't live less so they can have more, we'll just keep the cycle going. We have to suppress our own wants and needs and give bountifully to the next generation, even if they're not deserving, so they can have access and practice on our dime. Now that's a big pill to swallow.
Yeah. I'm just a hopeful Black man that I think with God, all things are possible. But we have to somehow get over our inferiority complex if we're going to make it in this world.
If you
We
have
got
it,
too many, we got too many stuff. We got too many pent up stuff to take the next step in this journey of life.
if we could pull back the layers of that onion, because Keith, until you posed it, I didn't even think that that was something that Black people had, an inferiority
Oh,
complex.
and you know what, Laura? I'm just gonna say this for next week. Someone was just texting me, asking me for the radio call-in number. We didn't give it.
I did. I gave it 3 or 4 times. 313-837-1340.
then
I
I
said
just-
it 5, 6 times.
Missed it. I don't know.
Guys, we're
Oh, that's
coming
right.
to
This
it.
is radio. You can't post it.
We're
The
coming.
question is, the real quick, Laura, the question is, let me give you a good example. In the 2013 mayoral race, a Black person told me this: we had it, we didn't do nothing with it. I'm going to go back to somebody that can really get it done.
We got to leave it here to pick it up next week. This is the Courageous Hour. Thank you to all our great sponsors: Continental Foods, Henry Ford. Oops, sorry, not Henry Ford, but Henry Ford, jump on board. Why don't you? Continental Foods, St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, Wayne State University, and always thank you, TCF, or now Huntington Bank, whatever name you want to go by, and Ralph Wilson Foundation. Thank you so much for your support. Until next week, we'll see you.
Bye.
See ya.
Put your faith into action. At Courageous Incorporated, they need your help. They need volunteers.